All right. All right. And good morning, good afternoon, good evening, and welcome to today's session of Truly Foundation and A Course in Miracles with your host, Oliver Blue. And I am so delighted to be here, to be your temporary host, your guide, your teacher, your temporary teacher, to be your signpost, to be your pointer. And I am just delighted to be here with you and knowing that there is one life to live, like the program say, one life to live. And that's true. There's only one life to live. Why? Because there's only the one life. And that one life is the life that God is. And God called that life love. God calls that life the I am. God calls that life his very own self, because there is God in reality. See, we just here at Truly Live, we only deal with reality. Why? Because reality is all that there is. Yes, we find ourselves in a space of the temporal. We find ourselves in this space of the ephemeral. Ephemeral just simply means this is only everything here is fleeting. Everything here is passing away. Everything here is just a temporary experience. So we find ourselves on our evolution, on our expanded awareness, having this what they call a human encounter or human experience. But humanity is not who we are or what we are. It's just the experience that we're having, and it requires an awareness of a body, which is what supposedly our parents gave us in birth. It's not what God gave us, but it's what our parents gave us in birth. And what our parents gave us is temporary. What our parents gave us is the authority to experience this ephemeral, this temporary world, this fleeting world, this world which we say, as the Course said, it's a world of illusion. Why? Because it doesn't last. It's not eternal. See, the one criteria of that which is real is that it is eternal. Something that is not eternal, it is not real. Reality deals with only that which is eternal. Reality deals with only that which is knowing or knowledge and intimate knowing. Reality only deals with truth. The truth that is true always, that it is universally in operation. And reality only deals with that which is one law. There is only one law, and that is the law of love or the law of God. And in God's law, in reality, it is unalterable, meaning it cannot be altered. Unalterable. Reality is unalterable. When we talk about reality, it also talks about that which is eternal, meaning that it always was and it always will be. It's eternal and it's present. It is always present. When we talk about what is the criteria for reality, we're talking about that which is unambiguous. In other words, there's not multiple options. There is no option. It merely exists. When we talk about that which is reality, we do acknowledge that reality can be unrecognized. In other words, we can be unaware of it on the conscious level. We can put up blocks and fences against and veils against the awareness of it. It can be unrecognized. But one thing about reality, it can't be changed. Reality is changeless. Like God is changeless, love is changeless. And what God created is changeless. And what God created is you and me. Therefore, we are changeless. in our essence. We are changeless in our nature. And when we talk about reality and what is the criteria for reality, we also say that reality is everything that God created. What man makes is not reality. But what God creates, that's the only reality there is, because what God makes is eternal. It will last forever. What man makes will eventually disappear or eventually dissolve. Why? Because it's not real. It has not the nature of reality. It has only the nature of this ephemeral, temporary world that we live in. And so when we talk about what are the criteria for reality, it is that, again, everything that God creates, and only God and love creates reality. God and love is the source of all reality, not humanity. We're the source of ideas that we desire to experience. And so we use the infinite intelligence of God and of love to bring these temporary experiences about, but they are not reality. For example, that home you're living in is not reality. That car you drive is not reality. That relationship you have, that special relationship, it's not reality. It's what you desired here and you're having the experience. It's not reality. What else do we acknowledge when we talk about reality? But what's the criteria for reality? That it is beyond what we can learn. Reality is beyond learning. Learning only takes place in this three-dimensional world. Learning only takes place in a world that we make. Because in eternity, there's nothing to learn. In heaven, there's nothing to learn. There's only awareness. There's only consciousness. And so all things are known in reality. What else is the criteria of reality? That it has no opposites. There are no opposites in reality. There's no opposite. Opposites only exist in this world of polarity that we made, up and down, in and out, hot and cold. That exists in this dimension, this experience, but it doesn't exist in reality. In reality, there's love and there's nothing else. There's God and there's nothing else. You know, in this three-dimensional world we made, there's love and hate and all the polarities. There's an opposite to everything. But in reality, there's no opposites. In reality, there is no beginnings and there are no ends. Why? Because it merely is always present. Reality is always present, always has been and will be present. It merely is. And so there you have it. And so today's workbook lesson is workbook lesson 247. Let me change that. It's workbook lesson 248, as my screen shows you. And today's idea that we're going to unpack, today's idea that we're going to practice, today's idea that will help us in our return to reality, this idea that's going to help us to raise our and expand our awareness to the reality of our oneness, to reality that we're love only, to the reality that we are one with our Creator and with each other, is this idea. And the idea is this: whatever suffers is not part of me. Whatever suffers, or whatever suffering one may experience, is not part of me. So let me qualify that. It says whatever suffers. The idea of suffering is not a part of reality. There's no suffering in reality. There's only euphoria. There's only bliss. There's only an increasing experience of happiness and joy and peace. So what suffers is not part of me. It's not part of reality, because you and I are part of reality. So who we are as infinite, who we are as impersonal and self-aware beings, who we are and who God created before time and space, who God created before the foundation of this world, is the real you. We're talking about the real you, that the real you is not a part of suffering. So what is it that suffers? What is it that suffers? What is it that suffers is this belief that we have in this personal self, the belief that we have in this body identity, the belief that we have that we're separate from God, the belief that we obtain that we are separate from one another, that illusionary self, or that ego self, if you want to use that word. It is the ego self, the belief in a self that is separate from our eternal self, a self that is separate from the real you who loves you. It is that self that suffers. But who you really are as infinite, impersonal, and self-aware, who you really are as one with God, who you really are as the very presence of God, who you are as this infinite, eternal being that has no form, has no time, and not subject to the form and time or the pain and suffering or the polarity of this world. Who you are, it cannot suffer. Your reality, in reality, you don't suffer. Who is it that noticing that you are suffering? What is it that noticed that you are suffering? That means that what is noticing that something is suffering is different than that which is suffering. And that what is noticing is your awareness. Your awareness that there's something that is suffering. There's a body, there's a mind, there's an idea of separation. That is what suffers. Why? Because it's not reality. Anything that is not reality, as I defined it, it is not real. That means it's an illusion. And in an illusionary world where there is perception, where there are other ideas other than the truth that is true always, that other is what brings on the pain and the suffering. Why? Because in that world, that's a world of opposites, a world of polarities. And so when we identify ourselves as this body identification only, and don't understand that the body is merely a communication device that allow us to have this experience, that allow us to come here to be the expression of the love and the light and the infinitude that we all share, then there is an awareness that something is suffering. Is awareness suffering? Does awareness suffers? Or does awareness just be aware? Or does awareness just notice what it's noticing? We notice a lot of things. We are aware of a lot of things around the world. We're aware of a lot of suffering that is in this world. We're aware of suffering that we've experienced ourselves. But who or what is suffering? Is it awareness that suffers? Or is it the idea of the individuated self, of a false self? The belief in separation? The beliefs in limitation? Is that where the suffering occurs? And we're noticing it? That's where the suffering occurs. Because in reality, in heaven, in God, which is the only reality there is, which is where we are, there is no suffering. And if as God is, so are we in this world. We can be in this world full of suffering. Like the psalmist says, 1,000 may suffer, 1,000 may fall at my side, but it shall not come nigh me. Why? Because the real you cannot suffer. We can have things happen in our life. We can have things arise in our day that appears to be challenging to us, or that appears to bring pain and anguish to us. But what we're learning here is that when we are aware and conscious of the truth, and as we abide in that truth, nothing in this world can arise to cause suffering to us. Suffering happens in the mind. It happens in the mind of a separated self. It happens in a mind that believes that it is independent of its creator and of all of its humanity. Suffering happens in a mind that believes that it has what? It has done something wrong. Suffering happens in the mind that believes that sin is real when it's not. Suffering happens in a mind that is what? Filled with guilt as a result of believing in sin. And suffering happens in a mind that now becomes fearful because it believes that it is due punishment. And it creates a self-image of itself that is inferior to reality, inferior to its creator, inferior to one another. And in that inferiority, it practices inequality. And so the whole thing is off. Our whole perception is off. We said on yesterday that sin is insanity. Why? Because it's not reality. It is children's toys. It is a children's play. It is a child's sharp-edged sword toy that we play with. And we hurt ourselves and we end up in suffering. And when I say we hurt ourselves, you can't hurt the real you. What you hurt or what you suffer is from a belief or an idea that is not true. You are the innocent. You are the pure. You are the whole and complete creation of God. You are not a body, but you are free from suffering as you remain as God created you in that state of abiding and remaining comes as we transform our thinking, as we renew our mind and not be conformed to the world's thinking. It is every thought of God. And that's the whole purpose of truly foundation. It is the reason why we established this nonprofit organization. It's the reason that I'm here on these videos day in and day out. Because I have a desire. It is the will of God to relieve all humanity from the illusion of itself, from the illusion of suffering. Suffering is not our lot. Suffering is not our inheritance. And there's only one way out of suffering, and that is the truth. That is true always. Embrace and abide and remain as you are by renewing your mind and by transforming from the world's idea. Be ye transformed. Move away from and move into. We move away from the illusion of this world and we move into the reality of who we are. That is your only way out. That is your only healing. That's where your healing comes. That's where your transformation comes. That's where your happiness and joy comes, from the knowing of yourself. And I have laid a great foundation here now to go through this lesson. Whatever suffers is not part of the real you. It's a part of the false self that we have made. It's a part of the false world that we have made. That's what suffers. Why? Because it's not real. It doesn't have its basis in love. It has its basis in separation, which produces sin consciousness, guilt, and fear. Is this making sense to you now? So all we do in this holy instant right now is shift our perception from the ego thought system to the thought system of love. It's just that simple. You don't have to go anywhere. You don't have to spend any money. You don't have to send anybody any money. You don't have to ask anybody for their permission. You don't have to do anything. But in this holy instant, shift the way you think. It's in our thinking. That's what needs healing. That's what needs transforming. That's what needs renewing, the way we think and what we think. This is a course in thinking. This is a course in miracles. This is a course in healing. This is a course in transformation. This is a course in your discovery of the real you that loves you. Why? Because the real you is love. The real you is radiant aliveness and radiant beauty. That's who you are. We are clearing up the confusion. God is not the author of confusion. God did not author this confusing world. We did. We took his power and miscreated. We took the power of eternity and miscreated from one tiny mad idea of separation. We did that. So we're the only one that can undo it. We're the only one. We are the only one that can undo the suffering and the pain that we seemingly experience. And now we're finding out is that this suffering, this pain, this anguish, this anxiety is only happening to a self that we made to be in substitute to our real self. And when we realize that, we have an aha moment where we say, oh my God, this is not who I am. I am the child, the offspring. I am the creation of God. I am love. I am light. I am purity. I'm wholeness. I'm completeness. I'm everything that God is, and God is everything that I am. And now I can say, I know who I am. I am the oneness. I am the Christ. Like Jesus said, Peter, you got that from heaven. When Peter said, you are the Christ, the creation of God. Now it's your turn. Now it's my turn. Who do you say that you are? Are you the Christ? Are you the creation of God? Or are you that person that came from your mother womb with all kinds of wants and needs and limitations, with all kinds of ideas that you have developed over the years that have caused you pain and suffering. And now you have found this treasure. You have discovered, you have become aware of, you have recognized the real you that loves you. And now you are filled with the glory of God. Now you are in the state of euphoria, where there's nothing but happiness and excitement about who you are. Happiness and excitement that you're one with the light and that you are the light of the world. And that your life now has meaning and purpose. That your life now has deep meaning and good purpose. And let's go do it now. And so, whatever suffers is not part of the real you. So as we can stand back and observe this world, as we can stand back and observe this body that we have identified with, who is the one that's doing the observing? Who is the one that is noticing? Who is that is aware, that is conscious, that it is not a part of that which seems to be independent, that which seems to be in a state of separation? If you can stand apart and observe this three-dimensional world, and you can, this world that we made, you can stand back and observe it. Who's doing the observation? Is it that which came out of your mother's womb? No. No, it is the awareness that you are. It is that invisible, yet real you that loves you, that has the capacity to observe. And who is that is observing, that there is one observing you? So where does awareness begin or end? It doesn't have a beginning nor an end. That's who you are. The never beginning and never ending self that God is, that we share with God. You are the never beginning, never ending self that we share with God. How about that? Have you ever seen yourself that way? You can begin to see yourself that way today. You can begin to enter into fellowship and full expression of the real you. And when you walk now, you walk with dignity, knowing who you are, that you have been crowned with glory and honor, that you have been crowned with the honor that comes from God only and not from man. What comes from man leads to suffering. What comes from God leads to your joy, your happiness, and your peace. And so, Workbook Lesson 248. Whatever suffers is not part of me. I have disowned the truth. And that's where the suffering came in, with my disowning of my true self. I have disowned the truth. Now, that was past. But now, let me be as faithful in disowning the falsity that I owned so long. Just as I was faithful to disowning the truth, I'm going to be even more faithful to disowning this false self that I made, this false life that I made, this false image that I made, this false reality that I made, and that collectively we made, that we call the world. The world is no more than a false idea about who we are. Working and operating and moving and making, and we made a mess. But we're cleaning up the mess. Like they say, there's a mess on aisle 13, where we're coming and we're cleaning up the mess. How? By being faithful to truth, by being faithful to disowning that which is false about us and embracing the real you only, to accept yourself as love only. You're not love in this. You're not love in this. You're not this and that. You are this only, love only. There is no polarity. There is no opposites in reality. Remember, you are what God created. It can't be altered. It can't be changed. It has no beginning and no end. It can't be learned. It merely is. You are who you are by the grace of God, by the creation of God. What is the grace of God? It's the creation of God. And thank God that only God creation is reality, and that which we made is not reality. And so we don't have to be beholden to that. We don't have to have any allegiance or give any credence to a false self or a false world that we made. Now we can deal only with reality of our oneness, of our love, and of our beauty. It's called the will of God. It is not just God's will, but it's our will. So let it be done right now. So right now, we disown every idea of falsity about ourselves and about each other and about our God and about this world. We disown it. In other words, we have no more allegiance to the lie. We have no more allegiance to being oppressed, for being imprisoned. No more allegiance to what we've been told, what we've been conditioned by. We only have allegiance to the truth, which is true always. That is our only way out of the experience of suffering. So whatever suffers and is not the real you is not a part of me. Whatever that we have experienced that is suffering, whatever we may even perceive as suffering, it is not a part of who we are. It's a part of what we made. Whatever grieves is not ourself. There is no grief in reality. We know people, have responses to different things in their life where things are removed or brought in or removed. But see, if that's where we're using to determine our happiness, our joy, and our peace, then we're putting our credence and our belief in a false idea, in a false world, in a false you. When we remove that, then there is no grief, there is no suffering, there's no pain, there's no death, there's no beginning, there's no life, there's no birth, there's no scarcity, there's no lack, there's no suffering, there's no loss. When we engage our true self, there is none. And it says here, what is in pain is but illusion that is in our mind. The pain and the suffering comes from a falsity that is in our mind that we made up or that we embraced as our very own, that came from another source. Doesn't come from reality. It doesn't come from God. It doesn't come from truth, but it came from an idea that's been perpetuated and perpetuated and handed down through the years. It came from a tiny mad idea of separation. What would it be like to be separate from God? What would it be like to be independent? What would it be like to be separate from one another? What would it be like in a world of separation where everything is separate and independent? Well, we are experiencing that. And it's not good until you shift your perception and begin to see everything as one. Begin to see through the eyes of oneness, through the eyes of love. And in so doing, in this simple shift in our perception, that is the miracle. That is the miracle. We don't think like we used to think. We don't perceive like we used to perceive. Therefore, our actions will align with the light and the love that we are. Our actions will align with the belief in the oneness that we share, the one life. So he says, what is in pain is but an illusion in your mind. So all suffering happens where? In the mind. All pain happens where? In the mind. We may think we're feeling it in the body, but it's actually in the mind. All hurt and suffering happens in the mind, which is happening because of a thought or an idea that is erroneous. It's an error or a mistake in our thinking. It's not a sin, as we made that concept up. It is not a sin. Sin doesn't exist. Do we make errors? Yes. Do we make mistakes? Yes. But errors and mistakes can be corrected. We made up this idea of sin, and the idea of sin that it can't be corrected. That it can't be corrected. That it wants judgment. It wants punishment. We made that up. That's not a God idea. That's a man-made idea that came from the idea of separation. Why? It came from the idea of guilt. It came from the idea of fear of punishment, fear, which creates anxiety. And that's where the anxiety is coming from. All this is happening in the way we're thinking and what we're thinking. This is a course in correcting our thinking, which is called the miracle. Which is called the miracle. This is a course in correction. This is a course in correcting our mistakes that led us into insanity, that led us to a place of almost being a mad person or a madman. We see the atrocities in this world. That's where it's coming from. The thinking. It's coming from the thinking. The belief in separation. The belief in inequality. The belief that we're inferior. Truly foundation, we are here and using the revelation that has been given to us, the download through A Course in Miracles, to help wake humanity up. That's all we're doing. That is all we're doing. And we know that it's not only a good thing, it is very good that humanity wakes up. Very good that humanity wakes up. So we can all exit the nightmare. So what dies was never living in reality. In this world that we made, everything dies. And here it says, what dies was never living in reality. It was a falsity. It was unreality. The Course says that which is real can never be threatened. Who you are can never be threatened. Who God is can never be threatened. Who humanity is in his true self can never be threatened. And then it goes on to say that which is unreal does not exist. And what it's saying here is the death and the pain and the suffering and all of the unloving things that we are aware of in this world. It said it does not exist. It's not a part of reality, so it does not exist. He said, when we embrace this, then we will experience the peace of God. It is in the knowing of what is real and what is not. It is in your knowing and coming to know reality that dispels unreality. And with the dispelling of unreality, there goes the death, there goes the sin consciousness, the guilt and fear, there goes the lack, there goes the judgment, there goes the idea of we being separate selves, there goes the idea of we being separate from God. Everything that is unreal goes when we embrace the reality that can never be threatened, which is the real you, that is love. And so nothing really dies. In the ephemeral and in the temporary world, nothing really dies. It's like a movie. The movie starts, then it ends. And at the end of the movie, what? We move on. It was just entertainment. We don't look at the movie as being reality. No, we get up out of our seat, leave our Pepsi and our Sprite, and we walk away. We don't take that with us in our home and say, oh, this is reality. My house is going to burn down tonight because the house burnt in the movie. We don't do that. That's insane. Likewise, we don't take this world serious. It's not real. We don't take our personal self real. We don't take our personal history real. It's just what we have experienced. It's not real. It's not who we are. It's not where we're going. It doesn't determine our future. Our future has no future. Our past has no past. Both are illusions. There's only the present. There's only the present moment. There is no past. There is no future. That only happens in this ephemeral world, this temporary world of time and space. Reality, there is no time in humanity. I mean, there is no time in reality. There is no time in heaven. We'll not run by a clock. We'll not run by limitations of space, and we'll not run by any of these limitations that we observe in this ephemeral temporary world. It's just an experience that we're having. And that is good news. And so, what dies was never living in reality, and did but mock the truth about myself. Death is the mocking of the truth. Death is trying to mock life and say, no, death is real, not life. Death is trying to mock reality by saying that there is an end to you and me. Death is trying to mock and to keep you in chains and in prison in your mind and in fear that God is not real and neither is you. That's what death, or the concept of death that we made, is doing. It's trying to mock our Creator. It's an illusion. And so when we look at bodies laying in caskets, when we look at a dead body, maybe you have experienced that. Maybe you've seen your loved one pass on. That is not who they are. That's why I say they pass on. They transition out of the awareness of a body and they move on to their next evolution. Why? Because they are consciousness. They are awareness itself. They are God itself. That animation, that aliveness that you knew in that person, that love that they share with you, it hasn't gone anywhere. It has just returned to the formlessness that it always was. It doesn't mean that you're separate from it. No, you're one with it. It is the one life that we share. So we're the one that has to adjust and to keep that loving fellowship going with them being embodied, disembodied. One day you're going to be disembodied. All of us are going to be disembodied. But we're not going to not exist. We're going to be the same as we were presently. As the living light and love of the one Creator, the one life that we all share. Now I disown all self-concepts and deceits and lies about myself and about what God created and my neighbor I disown the self-concept that I made of myself, the self-image that I have of myself. I disown the deceits and the lies about the holy creation of God, which we all are. I disown all the lies about our reality. I give no more credence, no more allegiance to an idea of separation. I only give credence to the idea of oneness and the idea of love. Now I am ready to accept all humanity as God created them. I am ready, and I have accepted myself. So therefore I have accepted all humanity, because there's only one self. So to accept yourself is to accept all humanity as this innocent, as this guiltless, as this sinless, as this holy creation of God. Because we are that as one. We are that together. There is no separation. And now I'm ready, and I have accepted myself, my reality. And in accepting my reality, I accept all humanity's reality. And I accept reality and humanity as God created us, as one. So all of us are the holy home of God. All of us share the same life, the same self, the same being that God is. All of us are love. All of us are reality, knowledge, truth, one law, the law of love. All of us are unalterable. All of us are internal. All of us are infinite and impersonal and self-aware. All of us are unalterable and unambiguous. All of us are recognizable. All of us are changeless. All of us is what God created. All of us is everything that God creates. All of us is only love. All of us is beyond learning. All of us are beyond time and space. All of us have no opposites. All of us have no beginning and no ending. We merely is. We merely is. We remain as God created us. And so there is no suffering. Suffering is not a part of us. Lack, pain, fear, doubt, death, anything that is opposite to love, it's not a part of us. It's not a part of the real you. It may be a part of the made up you, but it's not a part of the real you. But when you step into the real you, it's not a part of you. And so, Father, my ancient love for you has returned. In the knowing of myself, my ancient love for you has returned. Why? Because the knowing of myself is the knowing of you. Because what? I and the Father are one. When you see me, you see the Father. And let me love your creation. Let me love all humanity again as well. Father. When we say Father, our Father, the one creator, the one source. I am as you created me. See, I am is what God created. You are the I am of God. You are the Christ. You are the creation of God. This is who you are, the real you. I am as you created me. Now is your love remembered. Notice now, not the love of this world, not the love that we made, but it is your love that now we remember. And our own. Because it's our love too that we share. Now do I understand that they are all one. Your love, my love, the only one love there is. There's only one love. And I understand that. So no longer do we engage in the suffering through the belief in the idea of separation, in a separated self that we made to be a substitution for the self that God created. Wow. Whatever suffers is not a part of us. Now we know. Wow. Think about that. Let's walk in that. Let's embrace that today. And we'll see you on the next session of Truly Live in A Course in Miracles. Have a great day. Bye-bye.